Hello, I'm Paul, and in this presentation, I'm going to consider whether participants in widening participation outreach programs in England progress to high tariff universities at a higher rate than we might otherwise expect. And just to set the scene for this, it's clear we know that young people growing up in England from poorer households are less likely to progress to higher education than their better off counterparts. But that is especially true with respect to what we might call high tariff universities. And for the purposes of this presentation, I'm defining high tariff universities as those universities in the top third when ranked according to the average exam grades of students upon entry. Now, on average, we know that graduates enjoy an earnings premium when compared to their non-graduate counterparts. But that graduate earnings premium tends to be even higher for those young people who've attended more selective and high tariff universities. And there are also non-financial advantages potentially of going to university too, because we know that university attendance is also positively associated with a long list of favourable outcomes later in adulthood. That includes things like a longer life expectancy, a lower likelihood of committing crime, a greater likelihood of voting in elections, and so on. So there are social justice implications around the fact that students from a poorer background are less likely to go to university and less likely to go to these high tariff universities. Now, in order to address this problem, UK universities make available a number of different widening participation outreach programs, or WP outreach programs. And these are designed to support disadvantaged young people to progress to HE. And one categorization of different programs is presented by Robinson and Salvestrini, who describe some of the different interventions that are available. Now, this includes things like mentoring, counselling and role models, excuse me, where current undergraduate students offer guidance and support, perhaps to prospective students. There's interventions providing information, advice, and guidance to help young people to make an informed decision about their future. There are summer school interventions. These are often residential experiences where young people may live on campus, perhaps for a week or so during the summer, and they get a taste of university life, both academic and non-academic. There are what we might call black box interventions, and these consist of a sort of package of multiple different interventions, perhaps some of the ones that I've already described above. And this certainly isn't exhaustive, so there are other interventions we could add to the mix in there, for example, like visits to see university campuses. Now, data from the Office for Students reveals that expenditure on these kinds of interventions is considerable. And in the 2022 to 2023 academic year alone, English universities estimated that they would spend over £200 million on these interventions. But despite that very high level of expenditure, many academics have observed that there remains a paucity of evidence on the effectiveness of these programs. Now, one program that I'm going to focus on in this presentation is what's called the Realising Opportunities program. And this is a WP outreach program designed to support young people from a disadvantaged background to progress to more selective or high tariff universities. And it's delivered by a consortium of these high tariff universities. And you can see on this slide a list of universities who've recently participated. In order to take part in the program, young people have to apply to take part and meet certain criteria. These are academic in terms of how well they've done in their exams. And there's also certain WP criteria relating to the background of the students and seeing whether or not they are indeed from a disadvantaged background. We would classify this program as a black box intervention, as I described previously, because it involves a package of different components. And the components are listed here on this slide. Once students enroll in the program, they start by taking part in a launch event at a university with an opportunity to visit the campus. Then they complete an online study skills module. They take part in an e-mentoring program where they're matched with a current undergraduate student who gives them support. They attend a national student conference where they get to meet other participants in the program from across the country. And they also complete an academic assignment. This is often takes the form of the extended project qualification. So this is what they do as part of the program. And I was able to get hold of a load of data about a cohort of young people who'd taken part in the program between 2015 and 2017. They tend to take part between the age of 16 and 18. And I had data about 769 young people who'd taken part. And the destinations eventually of these students have been tracked through data from HESA, the Higher Education Statistics Agency. So we could see whether or not these young people had progressed to a high tariff university by the age of 19, Of the 769 young people who took part, 248 of them progressed to a high tariff university by age 19, and that was 32.2% of the cohort. Now, we could make a comparison against the whole wider cohort of all young people of the same age, and we can do that using data from the National Pupil Database. And of 554,000 students of the same age, about 60,000 of them progressed to high tariff university by age 19, which is only 10.9% of the cohort. So it seems like young people taking part in this Realising Opportunities program are about 3 times more likely to progress to high tariff universities than the average student. However, we can't necessarily infer from that that it is the program which is causing this effect, because it was also clear that those young people taking part in the program were not representative of the wider population of all young people in England. And this table on this slide makes this clear. So when it came to the Realising Opportunities cohort, more than 2/3 of them were female, whereas that's only about half in the wider cohorts. They were also much more likely to be in receipt of free school meals and much more likely to be from an ethnic minority background. Crucially, they also did quite a lot better on average in their GCSE exams. On average, they were getting about 2 grades higher in their GCSE exams, getting a high grade B typically, rather than a high grade D, which was the average across the wider cohort. So it could be some of these differences which are really explaining differences in the outcome that we see, not the Realising Opportunities program itself. Now, in order to try and work this out, what was causing the effect, I created a statistical model using data from the entire cohort. This was all state school pupils in England who completed year 11 in the 2014 to 2015 academic year, which I sourced from the National Pupil Database. And I used the method of binary logistic linear regression to create a model which could predict the likelihood of a young person progressing to a high tariff university based on their attainment and other personal characteristics. And the model made a prediction based on these factors, based on how well they had done their exams at age 16, their Key Stage 4 attainment, their gender, their ethnicity, characteristics about their neighbourhood of residence, such as how deprived it was and how many people in that neighbourhood tended to go to university, and information about whether they've been in receipt of free school meals or not, which shows whether they might be from a low income household. And I had all of this data for the 700 or so young people who've taken part in the Realising Opportunities program. To give an example of the way that this statistical model works, I'll give you a fictional example, but this is a fictional example with really used in the model. So suppose we have Harry, who is male and of white British ethnicity and in receipt of free school meals. And we know statistics about his neighbourhood in terms of how deprived it is and how many people tend to go to university. And we know roughly how well he's done in his exams at age 16. So he's got typically a mixture of grade A and B in his exact GCSE exams at age 16. Well, the modelling will predict that this student has a 19.8% chance of going to a high tariff university. Now, if we were going to make a yes or no prediction, we would predict no, given that he's below a 50% probability threshold. If we compare him against Iram, another fictional student, she is female and of Pakistani ethnicity, and she's not in receipt of free school meals. Excuse me. We also know some statistics about the neighbourhood that she lives in and how well she's done in her GCSE exams at age 16. So she's got a mixture of grade A and A star grades at age 16. She would have a 66.2% chance of going to a high tariff university. Since that's above a 50% threshold, if we're making a yes or no prediction, we would predict yes, that she is going to predict to a high tariff university. Now, data about all of the 769 Realising Opportunities participants was fed through this modelling, and it predicted that just 107 of them ordinarily would progress to a high tariff university. That's 13.9% of them. But as I presented previously, we knew from observing this group that in actuality, 32.2% of them progressed to a high tariff university. So the conclusion is that participation in this Realising Opportunities program is positively associated with an increased likelihood of progression to a high tariff university. It doesn't prove that it is causing their progression to high tariff university necessarily, because there could be some other observed differences between the groups which were not captured in the statistical modelling. Suppose maybe, for example, the realizing opportunity students to just have a general greater enthusiasm towards higher education, or greater inclination towards higher education in the first place. That was not possible to capture in the modeling. So without doing a full-scale experimental trial like a randomized controlled trial, it's difficult to be certain that the program is causing this effect. But what we do know is that participation in this program is positively associated with an increased likelihood, even when we take into consideration the fact that these students are not representative of the wider population. And this whole study led me to kind of reflect on the situation with widening participation programs in general. And one of the nice things about the realizing opportunities program is that the majority of students, well, only a small minority of students, about 14%, were actually predicted to progress to high tariff universities. And that was quite nice, because it gives you a nice margin for improvement in terms of then converting people who would maybe not ordinarily progress to high tariff universities, perhaps then to be able to progress as a result of participation in this program. So when you are designing a WP outreach program, the kind of content of the program is important, but it's also crucial to recruit the right people to take part in it. And you want to recruit people who perhaps would not achieve the outcome that you would want ordinarily were it not for taking part in your intervention. Some WP outreach programs, especially those that support young people to progress to university in general rather than to high tariff university, evidence would suggest are not especially well targeted, because they make the mistake of recruiting young people who have a high likelihood of progressing to university even before the intervention. If we look at this scale that I put on this slide, they're at the right end of this scale, which is what I call preaching to the converted. You're just taking young people who are already interested in university anyway and applying to an intervention to them. Maybe they will end up going to university, but they would have done anyway, even if it had not been for the intervention. And there are some other, other research which suggests this. So if you look at a report by Tazo, based on a randomized controlled trial looking at the effectiveness of online summer school programs delivered by 8 universities, they found that even before the intervention had taken place, around 94% of participants said they were either likely or extremely likely to apply to higher education prior to the intervention. So the program organisers were not giving themselves any margin for improvement, really, with respect to their attitudes towards applying to higher education. And sure enough, a follow-up survey found that 94% of participants had reported that they had applied to university. And the authors concluded that the summer schools, which were designed to reduce the quality gaps in access to higher education, are largely attended by students already destined for university. So in my view, the way to get these programs to be successful is A, to design an effective program in terms of content, but B, to recruit the right cohort of people to take part in it. And you don't want to make that mistake of recruiting where you're just going to end up preaching to the converted, because you've recruited a cohort who already have a very strong interest in the outcome that you're trying to guide them towards. Right, that's the end of the presentation. So I'll put some references here up on the screen so you can pause if you want to take a look at these. And then some contact details if you would like to get in touch. You may notice that's a UCL email address in contrast to the Warwick branding. I have moved institutions since I completed this research. So if you want to get in touch with me, please do get in touch with me at UCL, and it would be great to hear from you. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.